Okay, it being 6 o'clock, we're going to start the City of Coos Bay Budget Committee meeting. I want to recognize a couple of folks who are online, including Councilor Carmen Matthews, Mayor Joe Benetti, and Budget Member Rick Rayfield. Sorry, thank you. We are actually going to start with the Peace Officers Memorial Message with President DeNovo.
Yes, thank you. Today on Peace Officers Memorial Day, we pause to honor and remember the brave men and women who made the ultimate sacrifice while serving and protecting our communities. Their courage, dedication, and selflessness will never be forgotten. To all members of our police department, thank you for your daily service, your commitment to justice, and your unwavering resolve to keep our city safe. We recognize the challenges you face and the risks you take, and we deeply appreciate your continued devotion to our community. Let us all take a moment to reflect on the legacy of those who we've lost and recommit ourselves to supporting those who continue to serve with honor. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving into public comment. The public comment period is intended for the public to share ideas and concerns. It is not intended for an interactive discussion with the council. There may be opportunities for public comment during specific agenda items that require a public hearing. Members of the public are requested to confine their remarks to questions or issues under discussion during this time. During any designated comment period, individuals shall not engage in personal attacks, shall not impugn the motives of any speaker, and shall, at all times while in session, conduct themselves in an appropriate manner. No person shall make personal, impertinent, slanderous, or unauthorized remarks or become boisterous while addressing the council. Okay, great, thanks. Okay, moving into the review of the proposed budget, which is a continuation from the May 8th meeting. We are on page 73. If you have the printed packet, which it looks like it is also 73 online, right? Yeah. Yeah, I don't know how it magically aligns. Yeah, magic. Okay. Water Quality Division, exciting.
It is exciting, thank you. So for those of you who don't know, the City of Coos Bay took back in-house operations and maintenance in July of 2021. So we're going into our 5th year. Our wastewater asset is comprised of 22 pump stations, 3 storm pump stations, a lagoon that where we store our biosolids. We have 90 miles of sewer pipe, about 10 miles of force main sewer pipe, 50 miles of storm, and 2 treatment plants. So it's quite a large system. And so we have the Water Quality Division that manages that. Within the Water Quality Division, there's like 3 different teams.
Jennifer, I'm so sorry.
Sure.
We're having a technical difficulty. Can we pause for just a moment?
Absolutely.
Can you hear us, Councilor Matthews?
We can hear you now.
Great. Okay, back to you.
Okay.
Thank you.
So within the Water Quality Division, we have 3 teams. We have the operations teams, and they basically make sure that both treatment plants are meeting our National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permits. We call those NPDES permits. We have our collections crew. They go through and they maintain the storm and the sewer. And then we have our maintenance crew, and they basically make sure that everything keeps running in our pump stations and our plants. And so we have this budget here. I'm going to turn it over to Risha Latta. She is our water quality superintendent.
Sorry. Okay. Alrighty, so I'm going to give a brief overview before we just dive in. Fund 3 comprises of 5 sub-funds: the admin, Plant 1, Plant 2, collections sanitary, and collections storm. This upcoming year, we're receiving a new NPDES permit for both treatment plants, and with new permits, every 5 years comes additional testing that is required. You will see increases in permitting line items for these new permits. Throughout Fund 3, you'll also notice changes in personnel services due to allocation revisions, safety supplies due to OSHA requirements, and training due to employee licenses. Hello? Okay, sorry. Employee licenses for collection and treatment certified operators. We've had a very dry winter this year, which is not common for our area, and it would be a disservice to ratepayers to budget based on dry flows. So we always budget for wet winters. So you'll see some actual to date columns, which are less than last year's budget and less than our proposed budget, but we have to be conscious of the fact that those costs do go up drastically when we don't experience dry winters. This year, our division was tasked with creating an extensive 3 to 5 year capital improvement plan. Our maintenance crew went through each asset that we own and did a condition assessment. Throughout Fund 3, you'll see increases in capital outlay costs. Due to the aging system, that is not the pipe under the ground. Every pump, every building, every valve, above ground, all equipment is what makes the system work, and they assessed every piece of equipment. Many of our assets are on the older side, and purchasing parts is becoming not only expensive, but the lead times are not something that we can afford to have. Through this condition assessment, it was found that even some equipment costs, the full replacement was cheaper than a fix. So by budgeting these costs and providing accurate representation of the system we manage, we just feel that it's a much better opportunity for everyone to see what goes on when you flush. So, page 75 on the printed version. I can't see the online version, so resources. Okay.
It's the same this time, so we're good.
Perfect. So resources are pretty much the same. You will notice that resources from other agencies for Charleston Sanitary District and Bunker Hill vary. They fluctuate a lot. This is due to the fact that they pay their proportionate share of large capital projects, but they don't pay that until the project completion. That's our agreement with them. So normal daily operations for Charleston Sanitary District is in between 300 to 500,000, and for Bunker Hill, it's in between 120 to 200,000 annually. And so fluctuations with that is due to capital improvement projects that they might be paying for. So everything else is pretty much the same.
Can you or Nicole talk about charges for current services? Last GL numbers 1,400. The sewer rate fees and the increase. I know we did approve a 7.5% increase. Do you want to talk about that at all?
So sure, and I'm happy to start, and you guys can fill in the gaps, which I'm sure there will be some. So the budget itself was prepared at 5.5%, and I was like getting this over to our rate consultant, Steve Donovan. So it went to him last week, and he's come back, and we've talked about this already, that we understood that we would probably be at 7.5 for this last year, and then also coming into next year. And he confirms that he would recommend a 7.5% in fiscal 26. That accommodates comfortably the Pump Station 27 loan for Timber Cove, which of course we're still working on alternative funding, but that would at least give us that capacity, as well as not completely stretch us for other items that may come up. So, gaps? Okay.
And this 8.6 million is based on 5.5, so.
I have a question. GL, I just want to make sure, you've already said it, but I just want to clarify. GL 3402100, the resources from other agencies. I see the actual for Bunker Hill is 463, and we're projecting for the next budget is 139,000. Are you saying that 463 is because there were capital projects conducted, and that's why we are budgeting less for the coming year?
Yes.
Okay.
So Plant 1, so Bunker Hill goes to Plant 1, and Charleston goes to Plant 2, and Plant 1 has a few things to wrap up in fiscal year 26, so we won't be making large payments on that until the following year. So theirs is based on just a normal year.
Great, thank you.
So I have a question. How do we charge for Bunker Hill and Charleston? By usage flows?
So it's a combination between flows and what we call loads. So we test, we gather samples from their pump stations and we test their product that comes to us. And it's a calculation of what their test results are versus ours and their flows versus ours. So Bunker Hill is normally 5% of what Plant 1 receives, and Charleston is normally in the 25% of what Plant 2 receives.
But we don't have a meter on flows for either one of these
Yes,
locations?
yes, we do. So the flows are in that calculation too. So
Thank you.
Other questions from folks on page 75?
76 is the same thing as last time with the subscriptions and leases. 77, which is administration. So, questions? It's fairly similar to years past. There is some personnel service changes due to the reallocations of some staff time.
So that's why we see on that salaries line, GL 5101001, prior year was 643, and we're proposing 765 for the coming year.
Yes, and in the other funds, you'll see some reductions and some change. You'll see a lot of changes throughout. We're in year 5, but we feel very confident in this year, personnel services and making sure that everyone's allocated appropriately based on their usage of time.
Okay, and we don't have any additional FTEs that we're projecting for
No.
the coming year? Okay, thanks.
Okay, 78.
78. This is our debt service. So as an enterprise fund, we are self-sustaining. So we can take on debt, but we also pay back the debt. So that's what this large amount is.
I do have a comment for Nicole, actually, and this is a broader question, and I think Mayor Benetti has mentioned this in the past as well, but are we planning on equipment, like new computers across the board for the staff? I thought we had some aging products that we needed to upgrade, and has that been allocated across all departments?
So yes, we do have, for anyone who doesn't know, Windows 10 is aging out. So be prepared in November to replace with Windows 11. We do have a number of computers that are Windows 10, and so we will have to address that. That would sit right now, those kinds of expenses are in Fund 45. So
Okay.
we're going to get to that. There's a number of computers, so we're going to need a pretty large sum. We're looking at ways to do that. One might be, leasing through Dell, where we have some regular replacement schedules then. Potentially, if we don't go that route, we could look at, doing that with timber sale dollars in this go-around. That's not normally what we would do, though.
Okay. Thank you very much.
On to 79?
On to
There's no
79.
protest? Okay. So Fund 29 is the large capital side of water quality, and we have several large projects that we have to complete in the upcoming year, being the Plant 2 outfall pre-design, I&I reduction, permit required projects, and to keep $1 million as an emergency fund. So you'll see that throughout there's a lot of emergency funds because emergencies happen. So we want to be well prepared for those. And if we don't use those dollars, they carry over into the next year, which is great, but at least they're there for us.
Okay, 80.
Yes, Edie. So Plant 1, again, you'll see some personnel rearrangements, and that's really looking into our maintenance crew and some of the tasks that they do. Previously, they were mainly charged to the collection system, but they do a lot for both treatment plants as well. So we felt that they should be appropriately done. And
Questions from anyone?
81. '82 is Plant 2. So the same type of thing. Plant 2 does have, oh, I'll wait till the next page to talk about what's on the next page. 83? Plant 2 does have a large increase in computer hardware. This is due to the fact that there's a large computer system that's called SCADA. I don't know what the acronym means, but something very important, I'm certain. And the server upgrades are necessary for firewall protection. Ironically, and it was not planned, 2 months ago, Plant 2 was hacked and compromised. Luckily, we had a company contractually obligated to help us. They were able to completely shut down the whole system and re-establish everything. However, they did, again, say that our server is outdated, and that's why the firewalls aren't working as they should. So we purchased some stuff this year, just we had to protect our plant, so we did that. But every 5 years, the server has to be replaced, so now that's on our lovely capital improvement plan. So that is a large increase, and it will be for a couple years because we're trying to span the very large task into multiple years so that it's a little more manageable.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
This is more of a general question. I see a lot of actuals that are, you know, and I realize that you might be 60 days out from some of those actuals. But I'm assuming that if they're not spent, does that roll over into your budget or to the general?
To our budget. So we're an enterprise fund. So because the ratepayers pay for a single service, it can only be spent on that service. So it would come over as carryover for the next year. We do have a few large items that were purchased back in October. A couple of them we were just told yesterday that they're on their way, so that's great. So our actuals can fluctuate drastically very quickly, but yes, it just stays in Fund 3.
Thank you.
Counselor Matthews?
Yeah, I just was wondering if 180,000 is enough to update the SCADA system for the wastewater treatment plant too. Do you guys have like a master plan for SCADA management? It's supervisory control and data analysis.
Thank you.
That stands for, but it's a pretty big system that I would imagine is quite costly, at least on the water board side. It is pretty costly. So I was just wondering if 180 is actually even enough.
So we've spent, we'll be spending about the 30 this year, and it's actually a $450,000 effort. We're just spanning it over a couple years because some of the equipment we have is still okay to use. So the bulk of this 180 is for the server and a few firewalls, additional firewalls. And then the following year, there'll be more like computer desktop changes and different things. So the total is about 400,000. And then we also have an integrator of record who is in the contractual line item, and they maintain the software and train us and help us. And they were the ones to answer the phone when we saw someone else was in there. So it is more than 180,000. We've just taken a much more methodical step approach just to try to be conscious of the ratepayers.
Sounds good. All right, thank you for the clarification.
Okay, moving into 84, collections and sanitary. Okay, page 85.
85. So this is our second year doing in-house system repairs, and we have noticed that the actual repairs themselves could be reduced and filtered through the rest, the pipe and the rock and the different things. that we can accomplish in a year is more like 100,000. So there is a change there.
Okay, page 86.
This is stormwater. And 87.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Okay, moving into hotel motel tax. Nicole?
Yes, thank you. So this, this fund is where we gather the lodging tax dollars from all of our hotels, motels, the Airbnb, VRBO, those kinds of short stay facilities. And just as a refresh for that, we have a contractual obligation with the Coos Bay North Bend Charleston Visitor and Convention Bureau, which ties into the requirement under ORS that transient lodging tax dollars need to be spent in very specific ways, one of which is supporting an agency such as the VCB. So you'll see we kind of try to line that out as clear as possible. You know, the total transient lodging tax that we're expecting to receive is about $1.2 million. And we split that out between what we receive that the city uses internally and what we then send to the VCB. And then just another kind of element of what we provide to the VCB also manages the city's Visitor Information Center. And so there's a portion of those dollars which we can legitimately use for the management of our visitor center. So that's within those transient lodging tax dollars we receive. So happy to answer any questions beyond that.
Nicole, I noticed that the budget is flat from prior year. Is that because there's so much uncertainty at the federal level and well as uncertainty with travel from the international market as a result of the feds?
Yeah, that's absolutely it. The other thing I would add to this, while we kind of understand trends here, we do really lean into the expertise of the executive director for the VCB because she does have a pulse more on what's happening, you know, nationally, internationally travel. So although this is our budget, she does give us some insight into maybe some expectations. So yeah.
Great, thank you.
Mayor Benetti?
Yeah, so for some clarification, I think for the Budget Committee and anyone else that might be listening. So in 2003, there was a new state TLT tax initiated, which you referenced, Nicole, which was 70/30. But prior to that, all the cities could utilize those funds however they wish. In our case, I'm not sure what they were used for, whatever, but doesn't that, so that 70/30 isn't really the true picture of what the funds are sent. I mean, we don't spend 70% on promotion. In theory, if we collected them, we probably spend 40% of collection and 60% goes to the city. Is that about right?
That's pretty close. The city's had a long opinion of supporting transient lodging tax marketing. And so that's a piece of the contractual obligation that we have to support the VCB's work. Just as a reminder, the cities of Coos Bay, North Bend, the Coquel Indian Tribe, and now Coos County all contribute to supporting the VCB. And that agreement says that 2/7 of the original 7%, the math gets pretty fun here, is contributed to the VCB to help support their operations and the marketing of what we consider Oregon's Adventure Coast. And then as the mayor shared in 2003, if there was any changes to the transient lodging tax amount, so we were at 7%, we, both the cities and again, the Coquel tribe, who's not obligated to, but chooses to participate, went to the voters to ask to increase from 7% to 9.5%. And so that extra 2.5% falls under the new ORS regulations, which says 70% needs to be tourism promotion, 30% can stay within the city's decision on how to spend it. That's not necessarily tourism promotion. So it ends up being an interesting math for the total amount that we contribute. So
I remember that math. And on top of it, just for everyone's reference, since I've been involved in this here recently, we on the I think Coos Bay fits into that. During the summer, we are still at only 78% occupancy. And during the winter, we have about 50% occupancy. So we're a far cry away from where we really need to be. So I think this is just important to keep an eye on. Thanks.
Nicole, the only other comment, as most of you know, I serve on the Oregon Tourism Commission, the state tourism agency, and we too, in the coming biennium, will be projecting flat. And actually the second year negative, again, just because of the uncertainty of the market. Hopefully things will change, but so we're in line. This city is in line with the state projections as well.
And, you know, just as a reminder, I think we talked about this already with some of the other funds. You know, we'll be hopeful that we're wrong, and we'll hope that we can do a supplemental budget and reallocate those dollars, you know, maybe some additional funds to help increase marketing. But better safe than sorry, so we are attempting to align with what we expect the market to prove out.
I have a question.
Yes.
24, 33, 34, and 35, the actuals for those are quite high compared to all the rest of the years. Was there something special that was planned that didn't happen, or do you know?
So you're
Or the
working on page
adopted was-
90.
The adopted, excuse me, were
Yeah.
much higher.
So between, yeah, I'd have to look at the detail on there. Sorry,
Yeah.
we had VCB budget meeting this morning, and so I have a little special projects for VCB is the bus transport, but that's not us. So let me see if I can look that up. Generally, we do the special projects for us are additional kind of supports for events, or maybe
Right.
we
But
do.
but it doesn't seem like it's happened. So the actuals are more in line with the actuals from before and more in line with what you're budgeting, but you have this adopted from last year that's quite high.
And the other thing that could have happened is our carryover could have been higher. I can pull up what we actually adopted last year. And if the carryover was higher, we likely put it in some of these, especially special projects, because those do come up kind of sometimes unexpected that we do want to support. Or we have used it in the past for some work at the boardwalk or at a park to do some repairs or, you know, higher level maintenance things.
So would that help our carryover budget for this year? Because we're pretty low.
Yes, so if, yeah, right, that's what's budgeted. Again, though, cash is cash, so we kind of go with what we had as of March 31st and kind of estimate what we expect to receive and spend through the end of year, but.
Nicole, was that a special projects line? Wasn't that the city's 150th birthday celebration? Is
We
that where
did
that
have
fell?
some things out of there, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Again, they all need to be really things that we're trying to support the, you know, tourism kind of focused.
Thank you.
And we have typically what's in there is our flower baskets for Empire, Christmas decorations, if we need to replace any of those.
Well, I have a suggestion. It would be really nice if we could have more maintenance on the boardwalk. You're going to get tired of hearing me say
Oh,
the boardwalk.
you can continue. Yeah, it's always good to hear where, yeah.
I mean, I will say, I walked it this weekend and like slowly and really did a major inspection, and I think the city's doing an excellent job. I really do. I mean, I understand there's always room for improvement, but I really think there's been some pretty significant improvements over the last couple of years.
I agree with you. However, I think that there's still always more
Always.
work to do, and I think if there are some additional funds, I think maybe some paint and maybe some flower baskets and a few other things might just spruce that up. But with the grants that we receive from the new signs that we'll be putting up, and I think there's some great work that's going to be happening soon, and so I think Brenda will be very, very pleased, but there's always more work to do.
Mayor Benetti, did you have a comment?
Yeah, well, I just want to ask Nicole, don't we have I know this isn't the right area in the budget, but don't we have something budgeted for the boardwalk? Isn't that kind of an ongoing thing? I'm not sure if it's 100,000 or.
We do, you may remember, we talked about that in urban renewal. So the first part of last meeting, we talked about that for urban renewal. And we do, that was a decision, I'm not sure if it was last budget cycle or the budget cycle before, that there would be money each year set aside in urban renewal for the boardwalk, as long as several other areas, but. And I can remind you guys if you wanted to, what we put aside in the downtown for the boardwalk is 250,000. So the urban renewal has allocated that for next fiscal year.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions on either page 89, 90, or 91? Okay, moving into library. Sammy?
Thank you. Everybody hear me okay? Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Just a quick sort of summary and reminder or new information perhaps for some people. The library operational money is funded through the Coos County Library Service District taxing district. The city provides the building and the taxing district provides the money for operations for that building. So that being said, we'll go into page 94 of the budget then. Our budget's pretty status quo from last year. Some slight increases here and there just to account for rising costs. So, does anybody have any specific questions?
Okay, we'll start on 94. So we show a carry forward balance here.
Yes.
Okay, moving to 95.
I have one question. I apologize. On the library tax base, Tammy, last year, or the actual up to the first was 1.3, and you expect it to be less this coming year. Is there a reason?
We just always go very conservative on income, just especially with the turmoil of all the county and everything else that's happening. We prefer to err on the side of caution with our significant income.
All right, thank you.
Can I also just add a little bit to that too? It's my understanding in this last year that there was finally an agreement for change in the formula, and we had a slight modification. We didn't have a big difference in the amount we were receiving, but I think that's a factor here as well.
Correct, yes, we did account for the fact that the way the taxing district money is split has changed slightly. So we're just, this the first year of it, so we're just once again being a little bit cautious just to make sure we don't have to do any mid-year major cuts or anything.
But Sammy, you are looking at spending the full carry forward balance in this year's budget. So I see total library fund resources 2.191, total
Correct.
library fund expenditures. You have a contingency in there, but
That's correct.
There's a small
There's, yeah, small-
unappropriated, which becomes carryover 50,000.
Sammy, can you answer a GL account, a 3501100 auditorium rental?
Yes.
That's $100. What is that?
Well, it was our large meeting room. We, in the past, have charged for it. It became a bit dilapidated due to the water leaks and then those kind of things. We have done some work on it to improve it. We are going back to charging again. The kitchen is no longer included with it, so the charge won't be as large, but we have started charging again, mainly to be able to replace equipment such as the tables that are often used in the chairs and that kind of thing, just so we can have some money to supplement that.
So I know that's conservative, but we only think that we're going to generate $100 in revenue for the year?
We have changed the charge since this was created, so I
Okay.
anticipate that to be more than 100.
Okay.
Okay, moving on to 95 and 96.
Can I go back, Sammy?
Sure.
Could we see that updated when this comes before council? Can we see that updated line to see what that would look like for projected revenue?
Sure.
Are you wanting just to have an idea of that amount, or this
Yeah.
amount changed?
Yeah, just the amount.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Sammy.
Just a technical question then. If we're anticipating more revenue because we've changed that, how is that going to work if we're approving a budget?
So I guess I just would remind everybody, like, this is really fluid. These revenues will likely not hit these marks, nor will these expenses. They're just a close estimate. So if there's more or less, we always look at this and can come back with a supplemental budget. So let's say we book that room every week for the rest of the year, and we have $10,000 there. We can put that in a supplemental budget, and maybe it supports a program for the library that was unexpected. There is a lot of fluidness in these numbers, and so we can certainly come back and say, this is the amount that, the fee will be for use, so you can get an idea of what that might look like. But again, we're going to land on conservative. We haven't been charging. People might, step away from a charged room fee now. I mean, it's hard to know,
Right.
so.
I guess my point is, it's valuable to the community, and it's being used by the community, and I would love to know what that revenue
Yep.
looks like and the usage of it, so that the community understands how valuable it is.
Yep, I agree. And so we can certainly come up with we can let you know the amount that we're going to charge and look historically back when it was being used to give you kind of an idea what that revenue looks like.
Yeah, and Nicole's right. We don't know, I don't know what the usage is going to be now that the charge will be reinstated. So, but we can certainly do a good estimate.
Just for confirmation, that value will be reported on the actuals at the end of next year.
Yes.
Okay, other questions on library? Okay, moving into page 97, Building Code Fund, Chelsea.
Yes, so the Building Codes Division is under the umbrella of Community Development. They are responsible for implementing state and local building codes. They manage our residential, commercial, structural, and mechanical permitted work within city limits. They are an enterprise. It's an enterprise fund, therefore it's self-sustained by the permit fees taken in every year. It's fairly status quo, if not reduced in expenses. You'll see the carryover balance is, we're estimating conservatively low to be on the safe side. If there's any questions, let me know.
I have one, Sarah. So Chelsea, I know that we collect building permits that pay for the operation. So what happens when we get caught in, like, when the 400 houses start coming online? How are we going to be prepared to handle that permitting and inspection if we don't have the funds available at that time? I mean, don't we need to have another inspector or plan reviewer or those type of things in place?
Well, what we currently have are IGAs. We have an agreement with the state and also an agreement with our neighbor, City of North Bend, to share resources in the event that something like that kind of happens upon us suddenly. So apart from that, you know, if you could maintain, you know, a large staff at all times, that would be great. But kind of the building trade, it ebbs and flows. So it's not always the reality. So we have those IGAs to help out when needed.
Until the funds come in, so we can go ahead and hire the appropriate people on staff ourselves?
Correct.
Thanks.
Okay, any other questions on 99, 100, or 101? Okay, we already heard about the North Coos Dispatch Fund, so we will skip to page 107. Did I miss one? No, okay. Sammy, back to you.
Yes, back to me. Yes, this is the budget for the Coos County Library Service District Extended Service Office. The City of Coos Bay acts as the fiscal agent for them. It is basically they oversee the countywide services for the libraries, such as the vehicle that goes around and delivers stuff every day. They contract the databases, things like that. And their money, their operational money also comes from the Coos County Library Service District. This budget also has gone through the Coos Library Board and the commissioner, or the Coos County budget hearings so far. And now it's back to the city since they are the fiscal agent. So, if anybody has any questions?
Okay, any questions on 109, 110, or we'll just do those two to start. Yes, Brenda.
On 2108 contractual, there was adopted $339,700, and we've only used $139. Is the rest of that planned on being used?
The rest of that is for mainly the largest contractual thing the ESO does is the internet and IT services for the libraries. So that will be used for that.
Then will 199,000 be enough for next year then?
Yes, there were some large projects that are happening this year that hopefully will be completed and done by next year.
Thank you.
Good question, thank you. Okay, moving to 111. Okay, thanks, Sammy. Moving into general obligation bond fund, Nicole.
Yes, thank you. So this is the fund that we receive the general obligation bond taxes. So this is a levy that we placed on, that the voters passed, which helps support the reconstruction of Fire Station Number 1. This is pretty basically in and out. We levy what's necessary to cover the current year's bond payment. And then just as a reminder, we refinanced this several, I think it's about 3 years ago, and realized a savings. The council authorized us to go out and refinance that. It reduced the interest rate and saved us about a year and a half on the payment, about $800,000. This is paid in full in fiscal 28, so we're right there.
Smart of us, of you.
Smart of you.
Okay, moving into Fire Equipment Reserve, Fund 27, Jeff.
Okay. Good evening. So Fund 27 is for our Fire Equipment Reserve Fund. It's used to make purchases of like fire engines and larger apparatus and equipment that our normal annual budget doesn't support. So like a savings account for us over the years. A few changes that have occurred since last year, as you'll see in the revenue or services section. We had some large income last year, which we asked our 4 contract districts to contribute, and a couple of them did. Libby contributed $92,000, I think is what it was, or around there, Timber Park. So the change from last year to this year just reflects that change in payment versus what is normally transferred from the services that we receive, or the income we receive, and the portion that gets transferred into our reserve fund. And then the other thing is the ending fund balance for this year versus the carryover balance for next year is a big change, and that reflects one of the payments on the fire engine that we have on order. The first payment goes out this month for just a little under $400,000, so that's where that change is at. And then the rest of it will be paid out around October or September, somewhere in that time frame, whenever we actually receive the engine, which will be a few months. So, any questions?
Can I have a ride on the new engine?
Absolutely.
All right, you all heard it. We call it.
Thank you, Jeff. Moving into Water Quality Improvement Funds, starting with Jennifer.
Okay, thank you. So Fund 29 is where our large capital sewer and water projects are housed. The resource for this fund primarily comes from Fund 3 and loans. We have several projects planned this year. We have I&I reduction, inflow and infiltration reduction projects. We have some Plant 2 outfall design projects and a couple others. So if you have any questions, I can field them.
Can you talk about GL Last 43027, Business Organ PS 27?
That's a very important one. So this year we are doing Pump Station 27. That is the pump stations that's going to serve the 400 unit subdivision Timber Cove. And so this is the business organ loan that we got, and we're still looking for state appropriations.
Nicole, do you want to say anything else about that?
So you will see, so this is, you're going to see this both in revenue, so coming in, business-oriented loan proceeds on page 117, and then the actual $4 million is the construction costs. There will be, again, debt served, it sits in Fund 3, so the repayment sits in Fund 3. The additional, we actually have another loan from Business Oregon for the tide gates, so there's a balance there that's a portion for the tide gates. And then the bond closing costs related to closing out that loan is included in that $4,058,000. So
Can we afford that?
Yes, that's a piece of the puzzle that the Ray consultant, Steve Donovan, looked at this last week when we sent this over, and that's where he landed with, we had previously discussed a 7.5%, and he's still comfortable with that for fiscal 27.
Hopefully, we will get the grant from the state legislature. Nicole testified last Friday and did an excellent job. Also, that needs to be brought into consideration. I think that the council discussed that the budget committee should know about, that when this project's done, we'll have 400 new users on there that will dispense and disperse those other costs that we all are paying now. There'll be Plant 2, those costs will be, absorbed by that 400 also. So it should hopefully offset some of that cost that we're going to pay up front, I should say.
Can, can we afford that?
Hopefully, we will get the grant from the state legislature. Hopefully, we will get the grant from the state legislature. Hopefully, we will get the grant from the state legislature. Hopefully, we will get the grant from the state legislature. Hopefully, we will get the grant from the state legislature. Hopefully, we will get the grant from the state legislature. Hopefully, we will get the grant from the state legislature. Hopefully, we will get the grant from the state legislature. Hopefully, we will get the grant from the state legislature. Hopefully, we will get the grant from the state legislature. Hopefully, we will get the grant from the state legislature. Hopefully, we will get the grant from the state legislature. Hopefully, we will get the grant from the state legislature. Hopefully, we will get the grant from the state legislature. Hopefully, we will get the grant from the state legislature. Hopefully, we will get the grant from
I was just going to reiterate that this is an investment that will have a return for not just those homes, but other ratepayers in the city.
And they'll add to the property tax base in the city, so it'll impact not just the city, but all the overlapping taxing districts will, receive taxes on that too, so.
I feel like we may have some thoughts or questions down here. Anybody?
Where are these homes at? These are homes we're talking about?
Yep, it's the development project behind Cascade.
This is 400 homes. Do we have a plan on who's moving into those 400 homes?
Well, we know right now that we have a housing shortage. We generally run around a 1% to 3% vacancy rate. There are several large employers who are unable to get folks here because they can't find a home. So we're not going to have 400 homes next year. It's probably going to be about a 10-year build out. And knowing we already have in a 10, I can't remember what is our 20-year, what's that housing needs analysis period? We're roughly 600-ish homes in that 20-year period in need. So this is going to, put a dent in that. And there is, the possibility of some development, industrial development that could come that would also cause that arc of housing needs to rapidly increase. So again, it's not, we're going to get maybe 40 homes a year. I think those are likely fillable pretty quick. They're going to be in a price range that's below market, 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath, going to hit right at $395. Most of those home prices are in the $450 range. So, I mean.
Yeah, and it could be more than 40 houses a year. The developer said if they sell, he can do 100 a year.
And
so it just depends on the need and the how they sell. The other thing is that without this pump station, which becomes and would be the cities, that's another thing I think that's important to understand, that this pump station isn't the developers, it's the cities. In the past, we were asking a developer to pay that, but we don't have SCDs, and so there's got to be a way. In other cities, they have SCDCs or SCDs that would pay for this. We don't, and so we have to be creative and find a way to help facilitate these developers if we want this done, because this is ours that we need to assume. That's, of course, my feeling. I'm not sure if the rest of the council feels that way.
The only comment I was going to make is, you've already said it, Nicole, we're doing this because of our needs analysis. We know that we need that housing if it's and we know that, right, we don't have affordable housing here, and so that's why this council is committed to do that work. And whoever lives in those houses, that's great, but we're doing it specifically because we think it's the right thing to do, because we know we have a shortage of housing.
And if I could just make one more point, right now that land it's just land. When you put a structure on it, the money that comes back to the city it's much more than if it was just land. And the second thing is, a lot of people get surprised by the sticker price on the homes. Those are being marketed now and for sale. And what that does do by having housing available for people who can, really afford that. And we're talking about skilled workers. You talked about the difficulty that some employers are having finding people to come to the area. It frees up those rentals and other units that become available for people who maybe don't have that kind of income, that will now be able to find a rental or a starter single-family home that wouldn't be available otherwise. So the housing needs analysis identified, I actually think it was higher. It was 400 originally, it was 600, and I just heard 800 not too long ago. So in this area, it may just be Coos Bay, but it really is a region. that is impacted by housing, and it comes back to the city.
I'm looking forward to seeing the long-term incremental impact. It's nice to hear that we're gonna progress forward with it in blocks, right? And then it'll be measurable.
And we have an agreement with the developer that at least 150 homes need to be built. Otherwise, that $4 million gets repaid to the city to make sure that there is a certainty of a quantity that we can get added online. And I guess the last little thing that I'd add, that this project has been kind of circling with the city for over 10 years. And so to get it from where it was at, where there's a new developer that's engaged, to get it to completion, that's the council believed that was the piece that would help it get there. So, and if you've driven by Ocean, by Lindy Lane, that's the access point at this, you'll see there's just a lot of dirt work happening right now. Improvements made to Lindy Lane, a couple culverts there. So they're fast and furious builders, and trying to get them actually time to when we can get access to dollars has been a real juggle for us. So I do think we're going to see some homes fairly quick get built. So
Good discussion, thank you. Moving into Fund 39. Nicole, page
Yes.
119.
So this is the Jurisdictional Exchange Fund, and just kind of as a background, Oregon Department of Transportation in the early 2000s essentially went across the state and returned to local jurisdiction state highways that were within city limits. So for the city of Coos Bay, we received 23 lane miles, and those are and kind of listed in the cover sheet here, but South Empire Boulevard, Newmark Avenue, Ocean Boulevard, Central Avenue, portions of Anderson Street, Commercial Avenue, and portions of Commercial Avenue, 6th Avenue, D Street, and Coos River Highway. Those all became our responsibility, and with that transition, we were given $4.8 million for the repairs and maintenance of those 23 lane miles. The $4.8 million principal is only usable for those items, repair and maintenance of those, but we need to go to the voters to spend that piece. We can, however, use interest earnings to repair that. And so that fluctuates, as the markets change. Some years we get plenty of interest to actually do some road work, and other years not. We just let it build until there's some dollars there in order to help support some work. And we have done some work you can see in the fiscal year 24. Coos River Highway had some work done on it. So.
Any questions on page 120? Okay, moving into rainy day reserve funds. Nicole.
So the Rainy Day Reserve Fund is a fund in which the council has allocated a portion of the carryover from the general fund, 2.5%, be sent over to this fund as kind of a savings for those kind of rainy day events. It requires I think, supermajority approval of expenditure from the council if we're going to spend out of this. And as the general fund's carryover balance has diminished over the last several years, you're seeing less and less coming into this fund.
Questions on 122? Okay, moving into the capital improvement fund. Nicole.
Okay, just a little bit of history on this. You will remember maybe a few years back, we did some combining of funds based upon an auditor recommendation. It makes this fund really busy, but it's putting like kind of items all together related to capital improvements. We kind of did some work with it in the current year that we are in. We came to you last year and asked to move street-related items from here to Fund 2, so we have a true picture of the costs of what it takes to both operate and maintain our street infrastructure. So you'll see some changes, being continued here. We'll keep those items, just as an example, 360-0100. You see that here, transportation utility fee. It's going to sit on this until it ages out, for the history. Outside of that, the other items that really are remain in this fund are much less because of the street related items out of there. So grants are going to fund this. This is where you'll see timber revenue on that biennial kind of basis come in here. And this is what supports kind of our major purchases. We talked a little bit earlier about potentially funding those computer purchases, because it's going to be a large amount there. But this is also what has traditionally helped fund acquisition and outfitting of police vehicles, fire equipment, kind of larger ticket items that year over year we can't support out of the general fund. Our technology fee is kind of the other item that's a little bit larger in here. It's roughly about $40,000 a year. It's in here and it helps support both our IT service. We have a managed service provider, and then computer hardware, software. We are outside of a regular replacement schedule for some of our computer equipment. We normally have a 5-year cycle of replacement for computers. And it's a rotation by department so that we're not doing such a large bulk all in one year. What else is in here? I guess maybe any questions you might have.
A question. Under other financing sources, 0100, we've increased that to 175,000 next year.
Yes.
That's a big jump.
It is a big jump, and I think
timber revenue?
No, timber revenue is going to be actually its own.
I see timber sales.
Yeah, that's the 310. And that is likely to help balance out a couple of items in the capital section that would normally fall under general fund expenditures if there was, enough year over year to kind of cover. We do have some building improvements, specifically at City Hall. Our HVAC system is in need. I think we talked about that a little bit, maybe splitting some of that urban renewal and here to cover that. And then we do have some police and fire vehicles here as well, or equipment.
I still don't understand how the increase from 80,000 to 175,000 that's revenue, right?
No, this is coming in,
Financial
it is
sources.
coming in from the general fund.
Oh,
So
from
it's
the
a
general
balancing
fund to
point
balance.
and what's necessary to cover the costs.
Can you comment on the $235,000 council adopted on the timber sale 0900, and if there's been none actually in 24-25, and then you're estimating 310?
Yeah, so we normally do a timber sale in every even year, and it's a contractual arrangement. And so when we put that out to bid, our timber fallers, the logging companies, generally we do a 2-year contract. And they're then able to, they bid, but then they have 2 years to harvest. And that allows them to kind of work within the change of the market to, increase potentially their profit. So while we budget that in every even year, it could happen that it comes in an odd year because the harvester chooses to play the market to their favor. We do the best we can to kind of guess when that market is going to be, but we usually do it within even years. So we are in that right now. I think we are awaiting the 2022, which we believe will happen this summer. So we're kind of pushing the edge of that. It was late to get out on the streets because of the market and the timber cruise that was done. And we're right up against putting the 2024 out there. So we're going to have kind of back-to-back, potentially.
That's what I was wondering, because it didn't seem like it cycled.
Yeah. We had an awkward cycle. And then I'll just give you a heads up. We know that we're going to be walking into a period where something similar happened in the past, although a little different. We actually did 2 tracks sale, 2 or 3, doubled track harvest within the last 20 years. 10? Yeah, 20. And so we're going to end up in a period where we don't have a track to harvest because it was doubled up then and it's not ready to be harvested yet. So we're going to have a kind of funky period coming up, which we'll have to address what we're going to do. Normally it pays for things we, don't have another resource for.
It's basically a crop, and you have to rotate it, and you have to play the game to get the best price for it so that it benefits everyone, including the city. So, and that's why there's that fluctuation, is what you're saying.
Yes.
Good questions. How about 127? Okay, moving into the SCD Fund 46, page 128 with Nicole.
So this is similar to the capital improvement fund, in which, several years ago we combined 3 DC system development charge funds. We had a transportation SDC fund, a wastewater SDC fund, and a sanitary sewers, I think. So we had 3 funds, we combined them all. What's prior than 23, we spent the transportation SDC fund on a road improvement project. What remains in here is related to, it's water quality and storm. Sorry, I was wrong. What's in here is related to the water quality system, so that we can only spend those funds. It's very specific. We have a plan for that that had to be adopted. These will sit in here until something meets that plan, an element that's within that plan. We no longer have system development charges in place. Those were set aside with the idea that it would encourage development. It was maybe a barrier to development because those costs increased when you were going to build something new or attached to the wastewater system. So this is really just we're not receiving any more. We're just earning interest on what we do have already collected.
And just for my clarification, when you say a plan, that's a plan that, it's not just something that we did for the city of Coos Bay, it's actually filed beyond, the state knows what we're doing with those charges. There's very specific use for that, or is that a plan
I'm not
that we
certain
keep?
that it's filed. I don't know if we know that. I don't think it's filed with DEQ or anything but it was a very specific process
But
that established it, and
yeah.
it is not.
It's identified through a statute, a state statute, how you can use those, or is that?
Yes, for even establishing an SDC, yes, absolutely. And we have a plan that says how we would use those dollars specifically.
Thank you.
Okay, seeing no questions, we're going to move to the closed funds. Nicole.
And this is the last kind of element of our cleanup currently, at least as far as we know. And this is historically the computer-aided dispatch fund, in which, prior to us now being one dispatch center, we shared some server space here at in our server room for those other entities. And there was a fund set aside where they participated in the costs related to replacement. We've now, since we're kind of all one dispatch center, we're moving this into the like fund that it would relate to, which is Fund 10. So we've already discussed the elements here, and this is going to hang out with us for a few years until the history kind of drops off. just like the last funds that you would have seen last year, they dropped off this year.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to talk about any of the last pages, Nicole?
So these are traditionally the elements that we've added here in the back. They're just informational, just kind of add, help round out the story. So we have a little bit of discussion. They're all appendices items, kind of talking about how we try to do some activity-based costing that's really related to our allocations of staffing, across the funds and related to how staff supports those funds. Appendix B is those allocation amounts for positions that are allocated across multiple funds. Appendix C is just a summary of personnel services, so, salaries all the way through PERS, taxes, insurance, those kinds of things. You can see those elements all on one page versus across all the funds. That's kind of helpful to see. You could, from that, we're spending $22 million on personnel services across the city. It's helpful to see that in one place. You wouldn't necessarily see that if you were just, unless you're really good at math and can remember from fund to fund. Appendix D is our salary schedule as proposed. That's how this has been prepared. So you can kind of see the positions we have, the different represented groups, those salary schedules related to that. And then finally, Appendix E is just some helpful terms that we might use either throughout the budget in this process, just to kind of help people understand what we might be talking about. And Appendix F, I think we've removed most acronyms, but these are historic ones, and just we've kept them in here in case there is any reference. We do have a tendency to use acronyms, so it's helpful to help people understand what we're talking about.
Okay, we have 3 red line items. First one is on page 22. Last GL 2425. Give everyone a second to flip to that.
What's the, excuse me, Sarah, what's the overall category?
Library planning costs.
Thank you.
Is that the $50,000?
Yes.
Okay.
If you're on the computer, it's page 42.
Thank you.
So this, we discussed last week. This traditionally has been used for the library steering committee to use.
Yeah.
But however, there's no plan currently for this, as was shared with us. Sammy, I see your hand raised. Do you want to say something about it?
We had our library board meeting last night, and the board just wanted me to pass on that while the bond didn't pass, obviously, that does not mean that there's not still planning going on, and they just wanted to pass on that they feel it's important to keep the $50,000 for future planning.
For future planning, I guess these are not paid positions. This is a volunteer steering committee that's meant to come together to present some ideas to the council.
Yeah, so, historically what has been, recently paid out of here, we had consultant come in and do some survey work, also put together some educational materials about the status of the building. That's historically what we've kind of spent over the last couple years. Though the steering committee would have driven those kind of recommendations, I guess, Sammy, we're working on bringing back the steering committee. There's a couple of folks who are, no longer associated, like Roger was on the committee. We need to refill those slots and get them back kind of talking about what next steps might look like.
I think the comment at the last meeting was, recognizing that we have a really tight budget, the comment from, I think, a representative from the library committee was that, okay, well, if we're not going to use this for planning, because we're putting that steering committee back together and we don't have really he didn't say this, I'm now projecting, a complete plan on how to use those dollars, can we use that for equipment to keep the library functioning appropriately? So we know we've had, problems with an eroding building, and so can we use those funds differently? I don't know if that solves our problem, because what we're working off of is a really, conservative type budget. So I just wanted to make sure that we remembered that when we're thinking about this.
I think that was Rick, and he has his hand raised. So go ahead, Rick.
I would be in favor of leaving it in there so that the steering committee has some resources if they decide they need some consulting services or need another survey or need something else to keep working on finding alternative funding sources that are non-governmental, probably, in order to fund the library. Grants, grant writing, could be a whole number of things that are leading toward another replacing the library. If the money doesn't get spent, it flows into carryover next year. It isn't like it goes down the toilet or anything. Whatever money isn't spent stays in the city and can be used, may have to be used for other things. And that's true throughout the budget, that whatever you don't meet, if you're under expense, that increases carryover. If your revenues are short, that decreases it. So, this is a planning goal, I would say, to leave the funds there. If they don't get spent, they don't get spent. That happens in a lot of places in this budget.
Thanks, Rick. I guess I would push back a little bit and say I think generally where we've allocated the funds, they've been spent. And so if we leave it here, it's most likely going to be spent on this here. We could provide a strong recommendation that it doesn't get spent. But I again am concerned about the bottom line of the overall budget here. And I mean, in the grand scheme of things, $50,000, is that going to make or break? Maybe if there's an emergency and we need a contingency fund.
I think I'm in agreement with what you're saying. This is, I feel, is a significant amount of money here, and it is on a line that, everyone here voted against this. It's, it seems as though it could be better used somewhere else, possibly, or accessible.
Can't hear you.
If I could, I have to say, I actually agree with Rick. I think, given that we don't really have a good plan for the library going forward and the building has issues, it seems like a year with having this money in here so that you could bring in a consultant, so that you could have additional conversation and have funds to be able to support that, strikes me as a good thing.
Me too.
Jacob, do you have any, you're on the library board, put you on the spot.
I am, however, this week I was at outdoor school, so I was unable to participate. So I'm actually just finding out about this now. So I am curious.
Leaving it in or removing it?
Yeah, I lean towards pulling it out, in part because I'm not completely, I don't fully understand how those funds for a steering committee will be used. And I think, as we've seen, the community was pretty vocal in not wanting to move forward with a new library building. And I think, as I'm understanding it, hiring a consultant for some purpose toward going down that route again seems, I don't see that as a good idea.
Can you clarify what the steering committee is so that we know? I mean, are they solely looking at either building a new library, or do they have multiple functions?
I mean, essentially, what I understand is they were tasked with addressing the library facility and either replacement or rebuilding or new, like all options. I mean, there were many options over the last several years. We've had many iterations of what a new library would look like. Different location in the park, rebuilding. I think one of the last was rebuilding here. We got some design concepts, to be able to share with the public. So they're tasked with figuring out what the library looks like tomorrow in whatever iteration that the community would support.
So it's not necessarily relocating or rebuilding. It could be how are we going to deal with the issues that we have in that current facility. And since we're kind of at a crossroads, we have to figure out something, because there is a point where we're going to have to do something with the building.
Correct. And the makeup of that historically has been members of the library board, members of the Friends of the Library, staff members, community members. It's been a pretty wide range of individuals to just kind of put their heads together and come up with some ideas that would be an alternative to status quo of what we currently have. So,
which is a group of volunteers. And this suggests we would hire a consultant, which the voters said no thank you to the consultant's plan.
I guess maybe we can meet in the middle. I mean, I think if we left 25K there or 15K there, I'd rather see the other funds go back to repairs of the current library. And then that gives them something to consider. I don't know if it's a consultant, but if we can get a plan together to figure out, to Stephanie's point, if it's not just about building a new library, but it's here's the library that we currently have, and these are the things that we're going to need to do to repair it. And if there's some dollars there, I think that would, we could meet in the middle that way.
For clarification, you've presented us with a balanced budget, correct?
correct.
There's no shortfall. So if we approved it, there's a space for all of this.
There is.
And we have redlined approximately $750,000, right? Is there a space that would go?
So I think where the concern, and I hate to speak for you, Counselor Stevens, but page 40 is the concern. There's no contingency, which we normally would have a small contingency, which is something we could spend throughout the year for something unknown. And then the unappropriated ending fund balance. We know we're gonna, if these numbers are accurate, what we're expecting to come in, what we expect to send out in expenses, stay true, we're gonna walk into fiscal '27 with less than $200,000 in general fund. That's unreasonable.
And if you look at how much rollover we've used across all of these budgets,
That
we're
we've
going to be in
continued
a
to use
really,
over?
really tricky situation.
So the rollover, we keep using that. It's getting smaller and smaller and smaller
Yes.
each year. Yep.
Yes. Mayor Benetti?
Yeah, I'm just going to follow up. I agree with you, Sarah, that this should go into, if we need to pay for a consultant, then I think we should have it in a fund that we determine, the council, whether we should pay for it or not. I feel that if it stays in this category, it'll be spent. And I think that we have to be really diligent in this area. I also think an example is the Mingus Park pool. We had the committee get together, citizens got together, raise funds of $150,000 or better to fix things. I think we need a grassroots campaign here to get things on board. So I would be hesitant to put the $50,000 here. I agree with Nicole and Sarah that we need to carry over as much as we can. We're in a spot that we need to build that up, and every bit helps. I know 50,000 isn't a lot, but it adds to it. When we're looking at 200,000, 50,000 is significant. So that's my feeling.
So that was sort of my point, was if it did get moved over that and we needed it, we could make a determination to move some back. Thank you.
I think that's the key right there. I think Mayor Benetti hit it on the head. It's like, this puts the decision-making process of how that money gets spent in the council's hands and not in a group that is kind of debunked, really.
Or at the very least, focused on one
Right.
line item.
I mean, they're missing members of their committee, right? That needs to be replaced. I mean, it's not a viable group now. And at least this puts the funds in the hands of the council to spend. And if they choose to spend that on building improvements for the library, then great.
Sammy?
I just wanted to clarify that any decision or anything that the steering committee ever did always came to council for their final say. Steering committee did not spend money independently of the council.
Correct.
What do we need to do to remove it from here and put it in a contingency fund?
I think historically with red lines, if you were altering what was presented here, I think we had motion and a second in order to, remove it here and where you would all agree to put it. Just before we get to that point, understanding if you want to use it in fiscal '27, it needs to sit in contingency. That's something we can access. Unappropriated ending fund balance, you do not have access to once this budget's adopted. It is the carryover for the following year.
So it would be moving it to page 40, last four digits 6001 in the contingency.
If that's what
we
you
wanted to spend
decided.
it. If not, it would move to 6002.
Yes.
I would go ahead and make a motion that we remove it from where it's at and into page 46001.
Okay, thank you.
Is that clear?
No, you're
We
good.
can
Sorry,
figure that out?
I was reading it wrong. Thank you. You got it. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Say aye. Or sorry,
Aye.
any discussion? First time doing it, guys.
You're doing great.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Nay.
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 Sorry.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Okay, next red line is page 25. And this is the top line, salaries, last four GLs, 1001. Reminder, our city manager decided to take a $1,500 a month pay reduction as of April 1 of this year, and that is reflected here in the salary line. And while Nicole is very gracious and wants to maintain the right amount of funding in the budget, I am concerned that if she were to win the lottery tomorrow and move to Hawaii, we would need to have a budget sufficient to be able to hire a city manager, and the rate that at the rate she is proposing, I don't know that our salary would be competitive.
Chair Stevens, regardless of the size of an organization, good leadership matters. Leaders are responsible for setting the tone and the vision of an organization, and it requires making tough decisions, inspiring and motivating their team. A good leader makes a significant difference in the success of an organization. Salaries for organizations of our size can exceed $350,000. If we allow her to lower this salary, we increase the difficulty of attracting qualified candidates, we decrease the pool to fill that, and we increase the time to fill that. And it negatively can impact any direct reports under her salaries. I understand where she's coming from. She has the best interests of the organization at heart. But that is a hard job she does, and there's a reason that you are paid what you're paid. And if you were to leave, we would have to pay someone else that rate to get someone of your qualifications. And I am strongly opposed to her decreasing that salary.
I concur. What kind of motion do we need to address this?
Do we need
So
to?
the bigger challenge here is where do you
where's
want that to come out of?
Where's the money going to
Yes.
come from? So we
Great.
got to figure that out before we can do the motion, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Great. I think that brings up a discussion around a couple of positions that are listed in the current City Bay budget, which is on page 133.
You got us going. I'm having to run. I'm getting tired. No. You said 133?
133, which is the breakdown of the different positions.
Counselor DeNovo is going to get tendonitis for right thumb.
So many of these positions are core high-functioning positions. However, I do think that given the current financial constraints, we should consider a reduction to the staffing budget and make some thoughtful and strategic decisions that prioritize essential services while identifying opportunities to reduce spending where possible.
Okay, we're looking at this page. Where are you?
Right.
We're going to determine from this.
So
Which positions?
are we talking about, I think we already mentioned this at the last meeting. There was the economic revitalization piece. We just brought that position on this last year. Is that right, Nicole?
That is correct.
And if I understand that correctly, 70% of it comes from urban renewal of the salary, and 30% comes from the hotel motel tax.
That is correct.
Okay. So I'd like to preface.
So if this position's eliminated, right, then Nicole, you have to pick up the slack. So that percentage could be adjusted to you that you've cut out of your salary.
There could be a change in allocations, correct?
Yeah.
And I would also add, kind of as, in preparation for this budget, knowing that we're going to, be in some pretty tough conversations around staffing, and knowing that every department is already running on the lowest levels necessary to provide the services that the community needs. An area that I saw potential was with our city attorney. Not that we don't need that coverage, but that there are other ways in which we can get that coverage. There are cities who contract out on a time basis versus having an on-staff attorney. Knowing that our attorney was approaching a period where he's going to consider retirement, I had that conversation with him to know what that timeline looked like and if there would be willingness or interest to consider something a little bit earlier than what maybe he was planning. And we've come to what I believe is a good kind of compromise. He's got some legwork to do, but potentially, a 90-day period, and he'd potentially be ready to retire. So we're looking at that. That could be a savings of, anywhere between $150,000 to $200,000. We're still going to have some costs related to his time. We'd want to contract back with him because he has a lot of history with the city, and it would take a lot to get another attorney back online with us. So we will have costs. There are things that he does for us on a regular basis that we would still want him to do. He reviews contracts to make sure that there's, that the city's risk is reduced as much as possible. We'd still want him to do that. He does traditionally attend council meetings. I don't know that that's necessary. We can contemplate that. But that was a piece that we looked at in order to find potentially a savings. So,
Was there a number attached to that, Nicole?
So I think his, without trying to expose dollar amounts, but I think, we discussed potentially working through an hourly rate, maybe a not to exceed $50,000 a year. It could save us around $175,000.
I was going to say, I didn't need to know his compensation number, but was there a savings number that you thought you could achieve?
Yeah, I think we could get close to $175,000 there.
Just for conversation, the $50,000 we just moved into contingency, could we take $20,000 of that and move it towards maintaining the city administrator's salary? So we're looking at about $18,000.
There'd be some fringe associated with that, though. So
Right.
probably
20.
29, 30.
Oh,
Probably.
That's all said and done. Okay.
Yeah. Mayor Benetti, did you have a comment?
No, but I just want to reiterate, we're asking Nicole to change what she's proposed. But I want to go back and remind everyone that we hired her at one salary when she came on, and she lowered it already once. So what you said, Troy, is right on the money as far as I'm concerned. Excuse me, that's a bad term, but it's very accurate. And I think that we should make sure we maintain this salary for her, for multiple reasons.
I'd also, to go just in a slightly different direction, but I'm a little bit, sort of concerned a little bit about Nicole's role as also overseeing kind of the finance department too, because that's like a second hat you're wearing. And here again, if like something happened to you, the city might end up having to replace 2 people. And so we got to keep that in mind as well.
This is like, I don't think we've ever had this conversation, so I know it's a hard conversation to have. I think we need to keep some in contingency. I think Jason brings up a really good point. I think we brought on a new position, and while it's a difficult thing to do, I don't know if necessarily that's the highest and best use of the funds right now. And so I feel like if we made that decision to cut that position, to give you an opportunity maybe to hire additional staffing in the finance department. So, I mean, we've just watched you in the last 2 budget meetings wear both hats here, right? You are the city manager, and you're also the director of finance, trying to walk us through this entire budget. So, and I don't say this lightly to cut a person. We've never been in this situation. I just think it's where we're at, and I think it's the prudent and highest and best use of our dollars right now.
I agree.
I second.
Are you making a motion, President DeNovo?
Someone help me with this motion. I'd like to make a motion to cut the economic development position and take those funds and put them back in the general fund for the salary of the city manager, and the remainder will be in the general fund. That probably wasn't very clean. Will it work?
Second.
Okay.
Is that appropriately stated, Nicole?
Yeah, I would maybe want to amend that because we are talking about different funds that supported that. So maybe a little bit tidier would be a modification to the salary allocation for my position, which would then be allocated into those other, those other 2 funds. It's not going to necessarily touch the general fund per se.
So moved.
Very well. Adjusted, amended your motion,
So
so moved.
seconded.
Very well. Carmen, you want a second?
I did.
Any discussion?
Here again, I want to make sure that hopefully we have some maybe additional funding for the finance position too.
Yeah, so I guess I just would, again, this is the plan is that we're going to build within. We are going to backfill that position, so we will still have a 4-member department, giving the opportunity for the person who's here to kind of, and I don't think we're far off. It's really just a matter of having some time in the seat and then some exposure. I'm certainly very much inclined to pass that baton as early as possible while not overwhelming that individual. We're going to have a new member in that department, and so making sure that we give enough training time to both, the person we hope to lift and then that new individual. So I think we have a path that's within sight. I would expect maybe in this first year that we can accomplish both those things. I hate to put too tight of a timeline on that, so.
So I don't want to speak for Jason, but I think what we're wanting to clarify is that when that position is hired, we have the funds we can fund that position.
You mean when we're ready
When you
for full
backfill in,
transition?
we'll have.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, fair.
Rick, did you have a comment? Okay. Okay, any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Okay, our last red line is on page 70. Page 90 if you're online. Okay.
Was it-
70, page 70?
Page 90 on the computer, page 70 on the printed version. And we're looking at the last GL 2110, emergency repairs, 500,000. And Brenda, you're going to have to remind me.
Well, I thought you answered that question.
Yeah, I didn't have that one redlined.
Oh, okay, great.
I crossed it out. I had red line and then I crossed it out, so I think it got Nicole.
Awesome, fixed. Great. That was the three I had, Nicole. Did you have
Yeah,
a different
that's-
one?
No, that's the three I had as
Okay,
well.
great. Awesome. Okay. We are at the end. Does anyone have any lingering thoughts, opinions, questions?
I guess a couple questions would be, how close are the estimates for like the PERS and the health insurance? Are those known? Are they
So-
still really loose estimates?
So PERS is actual, we know what the next biennial rate is, and this budget was built on a 10% increase for health insurance costs. And I think it's coming in at 9, so there's not a lot of fluff there.
Great question.
I just wanted to say thank you to all the department heads. You know, at some point, budgets have been getting tight enough that all the fat has been trimmed. And you are digging really deep to find where to move things, and some really good creative work to make sure you're getting the necessary services done. So thank you for the time and effort that you're putting into that for everyone. And it's nice that we have a balanced budget. I think we moved some over to the contingency fund, but I don't know that we made as much movement or growth as we were hoping for. So, but at some point, we have to deal with what we have.
We hope folks find opportunities to reduce spending wherever possible, but we also know you guys are strapped.
Nicole, and if I remember correctly, we will have an opportunity as a council to review this budget one more time.
Yes.
To make any additional adjustments, to your point, if there's additional monies that we could find to put elsewhere.
Yes, this will come to you just based on, so after this, we have a publication that we do to notice that next review of the budget, which comes before the council. And the timeline for that, aligning with the publication times that the world now only publishes, gets a little bit challenging, which means we move that to the second meeting that you have in June. Historically, over the years, we did it at the first meeting, but it's just too tight for us to get. It's a detailed publication, has multi-years presented data, so it takes a little bit of time to pull that together. And then the World publishes, I think, on Tuesdays and Fridays, so the timeline to get it to them. All of that just to say it comes to you at your second meeting in June. And you do have an opportunity to amend it, but there are some limitations on how much you can amend it from this body's approval, so.
And that would be the June 17th meeting?
Correct.
Mayor Benetti?
Yeah, so I know that, to your point, Nicole, that we have obligation, we can only amend it so much, I think 10%. But does that mean 10% in revenues also?
It's 10% over the fund change, so,
Okay,
yeah.
yeah, thank you.
Okay. Other thoughts? Okay, we have 3 required,
Public hearing.
there's a public hearing now. Citizen input on the use of state revenue sharing funds. Nicole?
So this is just a required element in ORS. The cities, just like other local municipalities, receive state revenues that are shared, and we have to go through a formal process to open that up and give the public an opportunity to speak to our use of state revenue sharing. We also have to have a resolution, which gets sent to the Department of Revenue to kind of back up that effort and give the city access to those state revenue share funds.
So I will open the public hearing. Is there anyone that would like to provide input? Okay, I will close the public hearing. Moving into the required motions for fiscal year 25 through 26 for the proposed budget, we have 3 separate motions that need to be made. So I would entertain a motion for the motion to approve the permanent tax rate.
I'll make a motion to approve imposing the city's maximum permanent tax rate of $6.3643 per $1,000 taxable assessed value for fiscal year 2025-2026.
I would second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. I would entertain a motion to approve imposing the general obligation bonded debt.
I move we approve imposing general obligation bonded debt in the amount of $493,000.
I second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, I would entertain a motion to approve the proposed budget for fiscal year 2025 through 2026.
I'll make a motion, sorry, go ahead.
No, that's fine. Go
Okay.
ahead.
I'll make a motion to approve the proposed budget for the fiscal year 2025-2026 and forward to the City Council for adoption at the June 17th meeting.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Great work, city team. Great work, budget team. Good job. Thank you. I am going to close the City of Coos Bay budget meeting. Thank you.